Hey, you guys. Movie retrospective time once again, and once again going back to the 1970s.
Yep.
And talking about good old Michael Crichton.
Michael Crichton flick.
Once again.
Yep.
Even though, you know what? Okay. So this movie, I was thinking, like, before we recorded this, I was just like, how funny would it have been if we had just recorded this whole video with both of us just, like, sitting there, like, sleeping, like we were in comas? That would be super funny. Like, no one would watch it, but it would just be, it'd be funny conceptually. That's
Michael
the kind
Crichton.
of thing. Michael Crichton. Well, see, I saw this movie, like, when I was a kid or, like, a teenager, and I had always been under the mistaken assumption that it was based on a Michael Crichton novel, and it's not.
Okay.
Because he usually did that. Like, he usually, like, Westworld and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But this was actually from a novel by Robin Cook, who was, like, a friend of his.
Okay.
Now, Michael Crichton did write the screenplay, and he did direct it, so that's probably why I had that misconception.
It's a Michael Crichton movie anyway.
It is, yeah.
He may have well have written the book. It's the same kind of story. The same kind of thing that he did. What he would do is he kind of wrote disaster movies, which that was avant-garde at the time, real popular. But it always had a tech spin to it. He was always trying to show the public new science and technology. Shit that was like an experimental a prototype phase and how it would impact the world. You know, Westworld was one of them. Let's see, what else?
Jurassic Park.
He did Jurassic Park, didn't he? Yeah. And then what was some of the
Andromeda Strain.
Andromeda Strain. Shit, there was just a fucking Runaway with fucking Tom Selleck.
That's yeah.
He did. What was the one with the gun that would fucking blind you and fucking make you forget? You had
Looker.
When that Looker.
I think that might have been Crichton too.
Yeah, it was Michael Crichton, where they're scientifically measuring the anatomical proportions of fucking women to find out who'd be the most popular supermodel. Remember that? And they were trying to. It's about advertising campaigns and technology going bad, which is kind of funny because, like, we have those now. They're called fucking video game characters. You know, thing is they don't sell anything. CG doesn't really work that well. But back in those days, they thought if a woman was of a certain proportions, perfect proportions, that you could use her to sell products, and the products would sell like crazy. But now she just ends up looking like a generic supermodel.
Yeah.
You know, what's better is a famous person that has fucking outlandish proportions. He'll sell more. You know, we're in the era of TNA, but it was always like that. And just, you know, like in heroin addicts that sold products for a while.
That's true.
So, but anyway, this is a movie that was kind of like that, but it's about the medical industry, and some of it kind of accurate. The medical industry kind of doing bad things to make a bunch of profits and money, and corruption inside the medical industry. And this one's about developing this facility to store people in comas, or people who are in comas, how to keep them from wasting away so they're perfect when they come out of their coma.
No, that's not what it is.
That's what it seemed like.
No.
That was what the technology was for, though, wasn't it?
No, they were harvesting their organs.
Okay, yeah, but it was a way of storing a person who was in a coma, though, right?
Yeah, but the reason they were storing them is because they were going to sell their organs to the highest bidder.
Okay,
that's why.
I didn't think that they were all.
Spoiler alert.
I didn't think they were all going to do that. I thought it was
that's why. Because so this movie, it's interesting because, like I said, it's based on a book by Robin Cook. Now, Robin Cook and Michael Crichton were friends. They're both surgeons. The interesting thing about Robin Cook, you know, he was a surgeon, and then he was like, well, I wanted to be a novelist on the side, like Michael Crichton was. But he actually stayed being a doctor, whereas Michael Crichton, after he was really successful, he was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna like write books from now on. But Robin Cook stayed a doctor. So I think like Robin Cook wrote one book at first, like that was all about medical interns and stuff, and it didn't really do all that well. Like nobody gave a shit. Like, you know, the critics kind of didn't like it and nobody bought it. So then he very specifically went and read a whole bunch of other bestsellers and like took all these notes about how they were structured and all this other kind of stuff. And then he wrote Coma. And it came out in 1977, and it was a massive, massive success. And I think, like, even before it was published, like, because him and Michael Crichton were friends, Michael Crichton was like, oh, okay, I'm going to buy the rights to this and we'll make it. Because, like I said, they were friends. They were both surgeons. And one thing that they wanted, though, and I don't think that this was completely successful, but because they were both doctors, they said, well, we want to make this like a scary thriller. where some of the doctors are bad guys, but we don't want to, like, we want it to be scary, but we don't want it to, like, turn people off the medical profession, like, as a whole, because they were doctors, and it's like, you know, most people are going to have to go to a doctor at some point in their life, and we don't want everybody being terrified that, like, we're going to drug them and, like, take their organs and shit like that. Although I did say, like, the Wikipedia page said that a couple of things like that did happen. They said that, like, one hospital in Tampa actually had to change, they had an OR8, which is kind of like a big thing in this movie if you've seen it, and they had to change the number on that operating room because people were like, oh no, I'm not going in there. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, just in general, Michael Crichton movies, they're okay. They tend to have convoluted plots, if you ask me. They tend to kind of have slow starts, and they tend to be boring by today's standards. Just telling the truth. Some of them are really good, like Andromeda Strain. I love it, but the average person would find that boring, I think.
I think a lot of his 70s ones are kind of slow, and this one's kind of slow, although it picks up in the third act, for sure.
And then Westworld was pretty good, but I think if you were to show that to your average fucking 16, 17, 18-year-old, they would just yawn through the whole thing. I mean, none of that technology even phases them. They just doesn't matter, you know. And this one I had a hard time paying attention to it. I thought it was convoluted, kind of boring and slow, especially in the beginning. It got better as it went, and it started to, I guess, become interesting, but it was kind of too late for me. I'd kind of mentally checked out of it. Like, I didn't really even know exactly what the technology was for.
Yeah, they're harvesting organs.
Yeah, I just thought they were harvesting organs out of those, but I thought that it was also available for people who were customers who were in comas and wanted to be kind of like good if they ever came out of the coma, because that thing was moving them, remember?
Yeah, I know that.
And keeping them in good condition. And they were saying it cost, what, $40 a day to be in there? I'd imagined, what they were inferring is that you'd have like a Walt Disney type dude going in there, having his head frozen or whatever. And when he came out of the coma, he'd be all right, you know.
No, I mean, the only reason that they were keeping those people alive at all
was for the organs.
The organs. Okay. And that was why, okay, so the story about this, I want to say, too, that, like, this has a great fucking cast, okay? Yeah. Genevieve Bujold plays the lead, and she's fantastic in this. I feel like I know she was in, because I know her from Dead Ringers, which was like that was 88, but I know she'd been in like a bunch of stuff before this. I think she played like Anne Boleyn, and that was kind of like her big thing like a few years before this. But she's really, really great in this. Interestingly, so she plays the lead doctor, like Susan Wheeler, and isn't this interesting? Even though the book character is also a woman, and that's kind of like a big part of the plot, when they were making it into a movie, the producers were like, no, it has to be a man. And they wanted Paul Newman. Mm-hmm. And Michael Crichton is like, the main character in the book is a woman, though, and it kind of has a lot to do with the plot. Yeah. So he stuck to his guns, and I'm glad he did, because I think that worked out really well.
Yeah.
But this also is an early film role for Michael Douglas.
Yeah, he's young.
I mean, he was
not that young, 30-something.
He was famous at this point because he'd been on Streets of San Francisco, you know, the TV show.
Yeah, I remember.
And I think he'd been in a few movies before this, but this was kind of like, he's not the lead, but because he just plays like, you know, it's a big part, but he just plays like the boyfriend of Dr. Wheeler.
He's a supporting character.
He's like a supporting character. This also has Richard Widmark in it, and little cameo by Tom Selleck, who plays one of the coma victims that they put in the coma. Yeah, and did you notice Ed Harris was in this?
Who's Ed Harris?
Ed Harris was in Creepshow. He was in all kind of crap. You'd know him if you saw him. Okay. You'd know him if you saw him. Okay. The first thing I thought of was he was in Creepshow, but he was also in I think he was in Leviathan. He was in like a bunch of stuff. And this might have been, I don't think it was his first movie, but he has like a couple of speaking lines, like he plays like a pathologist or something. Also, Lois Chiles is in this, and I think she was in a James Bond movie later after this. So this is kind of like an all-star cast. So Genevieve Bujold, she's like a medical resident at, I think Boston Memorial is the name of the hospital, right? I don't even know if that's a real hospital or not. Yeah, so she works there. And so her boyfriend, she's dating like another doctor there. I think his name's Dr. Bellows or something like that.
Dr. Bellows.
Is it Dr. Bellows?
That's a fucking I Drew G.
Well, I know it is, but it might have been. It was something like that. I kind of feel like.
Most of these characters just kind of came and went to me.
It is Dr. Bellows. That's what I thought. Okay. That's what I thought because I kind of laughed when I was like, oh, Dr. Bellows. That's pretty funny. But yeah, that is his name in the movie. I'm not just like making it up. But yeah, so they're kind of going out, but they're kind of having problems, I guess, because, she's works really hard and he works really hard. And she's like, why don't you ever cook dinner or like clean up around here? Because I'm working just as long as you are. And he's like getting cranky, like, give me a beer, blah, blah, blah. So there's all that kind of stuff going on at the beginning. So a lot of the stuff at the beginning, and I think what you were saying is kind of just like establishing their relationship and establishing this kind of stuff, which does play into it later on, because I think that's sort of like the emotional core of the story, I guess. But I found it a little bit slow as well. But I didn't mind it that much because I really do like those two actors, and I think that Michael Douglas and Genevieve Bujold had really good chemistry with one another, so I think it was like a good thing, like setting up their relationship.
See, I think this is the problem with the movies. They were having unique challenges. They're trying to tell a story and build up to some kind of exciting reveal or trippy reveal around a technology that the audience is not real familiar with yet, and they haven't even really thought about the ramifications of these technologies. It's in every one of these Michael Crichton flicks. Well, that usually means that you have to make the audience feel well grounded and normal, like they're in a normal reality, and then you got to keep ratcheting it up, like keep revealing things about this technology, and then how it could be abused and how it could fucking go wrong and all that kind of stuff. And nowadays, movies like this could be summed up very quickly, and they wouldn't faze a modern audience.
Yeah, but I mean, this was 1978.
It's 1978.
And the thing about this, right, as far as Michael Crichton movies in general go, this one leans less into the technology aspect and more. I mean, it's a medical thriller, pretty much. Yeah. And that comes from the book. And so I don't know. I feel like even though the first part of this does have a lot of like medical jargon, because he wanted it to be, I mean, he's a surgeon. The guy that wrote the book is a surgeon. So they wanted it to seem as realistic as possible. And with the way that the doctors talked to one another and the way that they acted and stuff was actually very...
They want credibility and authenticity, right, which is all set in the stage and trying to set the tone so you buy it later on when
right.
That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like I said, these are very techy, very sciencey, and
it is very jargon heavy. But that's how doctors talk.
Yeah, and Crichton films are always kind of coming from a position of fucking authority. You know what I mean? In a way, it's like, check this out. I'm showing you what's really happening. Check out this weird shit. Think about that. And they were good. They were good. I'm not saying they were bad. Most of them were kind of like disaster flicks, which were popular at the time. It's just that, like I said, the tech is dated by today's standards, so it's not going to have the same effect. You'd have to do it on something.
That's true.
Nowadays, it would all be about virtual reality and weird kinds of genetic engineering and transhumanism. That's what it would be today.
But the thing about this though...
You have that on Black Mirror.
But the thing about this one, though, is I think what I was going to say was that I think this one actually maybe dated a little bit better, just because it wasn't as tech reliant as maybe something like Westworld was.
Right.
Because this one, I mean, people still need organ transplants, right? Yeah. So even though some of the medical technology is dated because this came out in the 70s, the problem of like still needing organ transplants, that's still a real thing. Yeah. And so it's still kind of a thing that you might think there's some nefarious, shady little cabal of doctors that are being like, hey, this person has a kidney that we need. Let's put them in a coma and then we'll take it. You know what I mean? So it's not as dated as some of his more technological stuff would have been.
Isn't it called Black Mirror?
Isn't
there's that series. Nowadays, something like this would just be a Black Mirror episode. That's how they would do it today. But they were really cool in the day. They were full-length features.
I mean, this really, and we've talked about this because we've covered like a lot of other like 70s like political conspiracy theories. We just talked about like Blowout the other day, and the 70s were really big, because of all the Kennedy assassination and MLK assassination and
MK Ultra
and all that kind of stuff. And Vietnam and Watergate and all that kind of stuff. So like the 1970s, audiences really liked stuff about conspiracies, and this movie is essentially about it's a medical conspiracy, not necessarily a political conspiracy, but it's kind of like the same thing. But so what?
People like it today too, man. That shit's still fucking big, and
I'm just saying that
More
you saw it
shit's
a lot.
happening.
That you
Yeah.
saw it a lot, like in a
Yeah.
lot of big movies.
It's not mainstream anymore because they wanted to stop that. They didn't want you questioning fucking them, you know. So they came up with conspiracy theorists and shit like that. That's CIA. Yeah, they didn't want you fucking talking about that.
But the thing about this one that I think is really interesting is that, I don't know, I just really like the character that Genevieve Bujold plays. So like I said, she starts getting suspicious about this hospital where she works when her friend goes in for, she's going to get an abortion, right? And she just goes, and it's supposed to be, like I said, like just a regular, you know, surgical procedure. And they put her under anesthetic and she never wakes up, even though she's very, very young and very healthy, and nobody can really figure out like why she went into a coma. And she basically goes brain dead, and you know, she's like wigging out about it because it's like her best friend, and she's like, that's really, really weird. Like, why did that happen? And so she's pretty suspicious about that, but, you know, you could write that off. You know, that was her best friend and she was really upset about it. And, you know, she couldn't really deal with the fact that this girl just died, like, randomly. But then it seems to happen again. Tom Selleck comes in. And, like, obviously, like, not the actual Tom Selleck. But so Tom Selleck comes in, and he was just getting something. He was just getting some kind of, like, surgery, like, on his leg. Like, he had a broken ankle or some shit like that. I don't even remember what it was. But, yeah, so he just comes in for a routine thing. And then he goes in a coma as well. And he's also very young and very healthy. And at this point, Dr. Wheeler is like, what the fuck is going on in here? Like, why are these people going into comas? And so she starts like asking around about it, and the main, like, one of the head doctors is like, yeah, but you know, this hospital does what, like 300,000 surgeries every year, like every now and then, you know, if it happens 10 times in a year, that's not really that weird, which is true. Like, statistically, that's not that weird. So I like that they kind of had this thing where there was still like plausible deniability. Like, it could just be that, yeah, like, shit happens. That's completely possible. But she slowly starts to become convinced that she's like, no, I really think there's something going on. And then she goes and like talks to the pathologist and is like, you know, just hypothetically, if I wanted to put somebody into a coma from which they would not awaken and didn't really want any evidence of it left behind, like, what would I do? What would you do if you were me? So she kind of asked the pathologist, and they're like, you know, and they're kind of coming up with all these scenarios. They're like, oh, you know what would be the best way to do it? Carbon monoxide, like put carbon monoxide like into the thing that they're breathing through, and that wouldn't really leave any trace or anything like that. So she's like, So she ends up like finding out that carbon monoxide is possibly being piped into this one operating room, which is OR8, but not all the time. And that's the thing that people start thinking she's crazy, because she tells her boyfriend about all this, Michael Douglas, and he's like, okay, well, we're gonna go look at the, you know, because they work at the hospital, they're doctors, so they can go in there and check it out. So they go in there, and she's like, oh, everything looks fine, but she's still like really suspicious. And yeah, it turns out that they only do it sometimes. Like, if somebody that's real young and healthy comes in, and like I said, they have like a compatible organ that, you know, whoever's bidding on all the organs is, you know, needs, then they'll be like, oh, they flag it, and then they'll kill this person or put them in a coma, and then they send them to this place called the Jefferson Institute, and then they keep them hanging up. Because I think that's kind of like the most iconic image from this movie, is that big, huge room, like full of all those people scantily clad people, and they're hanging. Yeah. And the thing about it is that, you know, this was 1978. They didn't have no special effects to do that, so they actually had to get a bunch of extras and like hang them there. Yeah. And they said they could really only keep them like that for 6 or 7 minutes at a time. So because it was like, you know, they had to like stay still because they're in comas, and so they hung them all in there, and just they had to like keep just filming a little bit and then stop and film a little bit and stop and like let them down and stuff.
I just remember the cover of the book, man. At the fucking grocery store, and check out all those fucking people hanging. I think it was just one person hanging by the
that's a great poster, actually. It's very minimalist, but I really like that. Or I think it was white. It was white. I don't remember the book cover, but
hanging.
Yeah, the dude was just hanging like from all these like laying flat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like a great image. But that's why the Jefferson Institute is this place where they hang all these bodies there, and they're all alive, but they're all in comas. They're all brain dead, because that's, you know, they do that to them on purpose.
You got a computer monitor them and moving them so they don't atrophy and stuff.
Yeah, they didn't want them to get bed sores or like anything like that, like from laying around. Wires. So they just hang them up, so they're just like suspended. And then whenever you know, they have kind of like auctions, I guess. They're like, hey, who needs this kidney or this liver or whatever? And it's like they'll pay, $100,000 or whatever the sum is, and then they'll be like, oh yeah, we got one like over here in the hangy thing, and they just go and like pop it and like sell it to somebody. So so that's kind of what the whole conspiracy was, because obviously that was what the conspiracy was. Now, not everybody at the hospital was in on it, but kind of like one of the main doctors, who she thought was her friend, actually, he was kind of the guy that was behind it, and he was the one that had set up the Jefferson Institute and all that kind of stuff. But it was all just for making money from selling organs, like on the black market, essentially. So that's what they were doing. But yeah, I mean, this was, now we were watching this movie last night, and I had been up since like 3:30 in the morning, so I was like really tired, and I think that I managed to watch it, but I think I dozed off a couple times. But I didn't miss all that much, because then I went and like read the plot synopsis and everything like that. I'm like, okay, I think I got all that. So, you know what I mean? But I will say, if you like kind of conspiracy thrillers from the 70s, if you like medical thrillers, if you like Michael Crichton's other stuff, then this is a good one. It's not the best one of his I've seen. I mean, I prefer Westworld, even though that's less, even though, like I said, it's dated more than this one.
Andromeda Strain.
Yeah, I don't know. I like Andromeda Strain too, but I can't decide which one I like better. I might like this one better.
We were talking about all the stuff that he did do while we were watching the movie, and I was like, did he do China Syndrome?
You know what? I don't know. Maybe.
Sounds like
I always get it definitely sounds like something that he would have done.
I don't know if he did. I saw it as a kid.
I can't remember.
I thought it was boring.
So maybe he did do it.
Yeah. It was boring. Had Jane Fonda in it. And Jack Lemmon.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look that up again. He very well may have, because it did sound like something that was kind of like in
what would happen
in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, if the fucking core melts down and it goes down to burn
that sounds like
to the water table.
Whatever.
Yeah, fucking make enough steam and fucking burn its way down to China. The China Syndrome.
Like dig into China. Like, oh, that's.
I think that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, they probably were.
That the hot core would burn its way to China.
Yeah.
Fuck gravity. Go right through the core and keep on going.
Well, I mean, they didn't really think about it all that much.
I think it was a joke. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the thing. I kind of feel like this movie, I really liked this one, and I really liked the acting performances and stuff like that, but it is pretty slow and jargon heavy for like the first 2/3, I would say. Like, once the conspiracy really starts rolling, because it takes a while. I mean, she kind of gets onto it because her friend dies. And she's like, that's weird. And so she starts like asking questions and stuff. But it doesn't really get to a point where, where she kind of becomes a target of the conspiracy, where people start like following her and shit, like real nefarious shit starts happening. Like, it takes a while to get to that point. But once it gets to the third act, I really, really liked it. Because then it becomes kind of like a race against time, because, the doctor like drugs her and is going to take her kidneys or whatever the fuck. Like, he's gonna coma her as well. So, and then like the boyfriend has to nut up and like save her and turn off the gas and all this other kind of stuff, like up in the, because they have it like up in this attic thing, or up in the, I don't know, like it's up in the, well, I want to say it's up in the bowels are down, but it's up in the like top of, in the top bowels of the hospital, where they have like this thing that that they have like on a, I think it's like a radio transmitter or something like that like tells them, oh, let's do the carbon monoxide today, because they don't do it to everybody. So yeah, I will say that it's not the best Michael Crichton I've seen, but I don't think it's the worst either.
It's not a bad made movie. It looks
it's good. Actually really well made, I think. And it had, like I said, it had a great cast. It's Jerry Goldsmith did the score. It made a shit ton of money. I think it only cost like $4 or $5 million to make, and it made like 50 or 60 million back. Like, it was a big success.
It's just a little slow, and it's kind of the topic matter is kind of dated a little bit, and it's just, if you're a Michael Crichton fan,
then you should definitely see it. Then you should definitely see it. Like I said, I think it's one of his ones from the 70s that that has not dated as much as something like Runaway or something like that, which obviously
Runaway is ridiculous.
I mean, seeing it now is like ridiculous.
But you can watch that and actually laugh at it.
That's true, just because of how ridiculous. This one, because it's a lot more realistic, and like I said, it's having to do with something that still goes on, like organ theft. That's still a thing, so it's not as dated as some of his other stuff.
If you guys don't know what Runaway is, it's Tom Selleck. It's a response to RoboCop, I think. Michael Crichton. Tom Selleck is a fucking cop who's supposed to be hunting down fucking robots that have gone fucking crazy. And when you see the robots, he's talking about fucking the printer. Talking about printers and dishwashers. It looks like a printer on a fucking on wheels. Robots that fucking plant plants, and it just the robots are not a threat.
Yeah, I think we did a review. We did a review of it a while back, ridiculous. And I said I think of it as fucking the killer fax machine like coming at you or some shit like that.
And then eventually he's got to fight an army of fucking ants made out of a Erector set.
And what that was the one that was the one that had what's his face from Kiss in it too,
Gene Simmons
as the villain.
Gene Simmons was actually the best part of the movie.
He was actually.
He's a good villain.
Yeah.
But no, that Runaway would make a great riff tracks or a fucking really good riff tracks or MST.
That's what I'm saying, and that's just because that one, like the technology in that one, just like looks so laughably dated. Yeah. Whereas this one doesn't really have that problem, like I said, because the only things that are dated in this are kind of like some of the medical things that they do, and
Tom
and that
Selleck
kind of stuff.
Is in a fucking blue suit with chainmail armor and fucking reflective grids with a laser gun. Doing fucking IMT and combat roles, trying to fight against basically a printer with wheels that can shoot a fucking.
I'm 99% sure that's an actual printer.
I think it was a printer.
I mean, it looked like a printer.
It's just fucking ridiculous. Right. At least in
like
RoboCop,
one of those office printers. It looked like one of those.
Yeah. At least with RoboCop, they had tentacles and fucking legs and feet and faces and they could talk and shit. These things could talk, but it was just like your cell phone is far more powerful than the robots.
Yeah, nobody really saw any of that kind of stuff coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm gonna say, so if you've seen Coma, let me know. They did a mini-series of it, like a 2-part mini-series on A&E back in 2012 of Coma, so it's like another adaptation of the book. I don't know if it's any good or not, but, if you've seen it, let me know. Like I said, this is, I didn't love it, but I thought it was pretty good. I think it took a while to get going, but I really did like... I think Genevieve Bujold was my favorite part of it. Well, I like her anyway. Like I said, she was really good in Dead Ringers. And Michael Douglas is great. And so all the acting is really, really good. I just think it took too long to, get where it was going. But once it got where it was going, I think it got a lot better.
I'll pass.
I think it got a lot better.
I'll pass.
I didn't like it as much as... Because I remembered seeing this when I was younger. And for some reason, I was just like, ooh, that was really scary. And, it stuck in my head. But I don't know why, necessarily. But... I don't know. Maybe there's just something about the concept of it that I really liked. But yeah. Anyways, it's on HBO Max. So if you want to watch it and you have HBO Max, then you can probably watch it. And if you've seen it, if you love it, if you hate it, let me know in the comments. And we will see you guys again on the next retrospective. Bye.